Hi.
Hi,
Okay.
Tony. Thanks so much for speaking with us today.
You're welcome, Ray.
Do you
Good.
mind introducing
Here,
yourself?
I'm gonna sit a little bit to the side.
So tell
Hi,
us a little bit about you.
I'm Tony Hoffman. I'm a developmental psychologist. I teach here at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and also at the American University of Beirut, where I have focused my research and my teaching on um, the protection of children in extreme circumstances. Um, yeah.
Okay, so what is your connection with humanitarian work and child-friendly spaces, more specifically?
I got interested in humanitarian work about 14 years ago, purely by chance. Um, it was a fun thing. I started consulting a little bit with NGOs about how to improve their child protection programs as a psychologist therapist. Um, what was the question?
What's your connection with humanitarian work and
Oh,
child-friendly
so my
spaces?
connection since then has grown in to become a person who is training um, others about various aspects of protection work, and particularly training local NGOs about what they can do to provide service. What I mean by local is not local here in Santa Cruz, but local on the spot wherever the crisis is occurring. And so that's training that usually occurs with a translator, but I've somehow been able to work through the barriers of that and provide the international and expert knowledge about various aspects of child protection and being able to bring it into the needs and the applications that a local NGO might be working with. In the process, I've also become an academic advisor for the United Nations Child Protection Working Group, which is an interagency program that provides expertise in child protection, mainly in crises, but not completely. It also works in development situations. And I happen to be on the Child Friendly Space committee for that group. So it's important to note that when I'm talking about my humanitarian career, is it's mainly been as an advisor. I've been on the ground in many crises, but as an advisor, not necessarily as someone doing direct service, because the essence of good humanitarian service work is to have people learn how to help themselves and not have outsiders come in and do the work for them. Um, so the training has been wonderful in that regard. Yeah.
Awesome. So you've spoken a little bit about doing training for implementing these child-friendly spaces. Have you ever created an actual child-friendly
Yeah,
space?
I was. I created in the earthquake in Haiti. I created and developed a child-friendly space for a displacement camp um, in a large part, in an area that was part of Port-au-Prince that was heavily hit by the earthquake. And it turned out it was in an area that was on a private waste dump, actually, for um, a large company that owned a large piece of land in the area. They allowed people to, all the buildings in the surrounding area had been destroyed, so people were camping and setting up tents in the uh, waste dump, and they needed a child-friendly space. So that was an interesting and very difficult problem. I arrived about a month and a half after the earthquake hit, and the situation there was very dangerous and very difficult. Even though it had been a good 5 weeks since the earthquake, I think, when I landed, and we developed child-friendly spaces there. And then I've also advised and helped with the ground up in child-friendly spaces in Lebanon with Syrian refugees, and also helped to rebuild and redevelop a child-friendly space program in Uganda.
Awesome. So, to you, and just in general, why, like, what's the importance of child-friendly spaces? Why are they so important?
I think the essence of good humanitarian work is that you set up a situation where people can do what they naturally do, and for me, that's exactly what a child-friendly space does. All it does is it lets people, in the midst of an emergency, allow children to do what children naturally do, which is play. And in the process, that the international person like myself would simply do is simply provide people with an opportunity that they're too busy to provide for themselves because of the dire nature of the emergency they're in. So child-friendly space is nothing more than providing a space for children to play, for children to be, for children to be safe. And in that respect, the essence of good humanitarian work is to simply facilitate and to provide situations and opportunities for people to do what they would naturally do. A child-friendly space is nothing more than a children's version of that. Open up the school, the children will come. Open up the playground, children will come and play. And that's really the best aspect of what child-friendly spaces are all about.
And then on that note, so what are some of the most common difficulties you encounter when you're trying to establish these child-friendly spaces?
Well, the most common difficulties is that they're extremely popular. And they get filled up quickly. And ideally, we have a staff ratio of younger children of about 1 staff worker for every 20 children in a child-friendly space. With older kids, it can get a little bit larger. But everybody wants to come and play. Everybody wants to come in and get the basic lessons and have children get together in some way. So one of the biggest problems is too many kids. Another big problem is sanitation and cleanliness in a place like that, and so they have to be anticipated. I'd say the other big problem is that child-friendly spaces are seen, just like in Western and Northern societies, where you see a lot of children in a playground or a lot of children in a school, you think of young children. And I think it's very important to open up a child-friendly space for the youngest children first. Not so much the youngest, but the early latency age, 5 to 9-year-olds first, then possibly have a under 5 program. But what people often fail to do and forget to do, and it's a big challenge, is develop a teen-friendly space. And so often reminding people that the teenagers need a space for themselves too is a important program development. Other issues with child-friendly spaces, major issues, is Westerners coming in and thinking that children need to play with Western toys, but that's correctable. So that's not as big a problem as the problems I've just mentioned. Yeah.
And then just to wrap it up real quickly, what would you suggest to someone who wants to get involved with child-friendly spaces?
I would suggest, like an undergraduate, like yourselves. Okay. First of all, there's certificate programs in child protection. You don't need to get a graduate degree. There's certificate programs through, it's called Red R. There's 2 or 3 training organizations that just do training for NGOs and UN. Save the Children has a training program. You can find some of them. Is get the training needed to do basic child protection work. And almost there's a graduate degree in child protection and emergencies at the University of Durban, I think, in South Africa. But the basic idea is, whether you get a degree or not, is to get your basic certificate and training in child protection, and then get on the ground in an emergency or in a disaster situation or a development situation, and start working with local staff that are creating them. It's not hard, because it's just doing what children naturally do. Some of the best workers I've seen in child protection that have learned to set up child-friendly spaces have degrees in early childhood education, but some of those are AA degrees in our community colleges here in the United States. So there's a number of trainings available. They don't take a lot of extensive credential work. The more training, the better, but I'd say the best thing to do is go work in a local community, preschools or after-school programs in an affected nation in some way, and get training online and get training in some of these training programs, and off you go. The big NGOs always want child-friendly spaces now. They've become the mainstream in development programs. I was surprised to see recently that Oxfam, which is mainly community development, has child-friendly spaces. food and nutrition programs, which are mainly about delivering food and nutrition, they're having child-friendly spaces available for people while they're dealing with food and nutrition issues. So it's become very popular, and so if you've got some basic background, there's a lot of easy ways to get going there. I mean, there's obviously the more obvious aspects of development work is it's good to speak 2 or 3 languages and be able to speak a language of negotiation wherever you'll be working. But that's a training need that everybody should have if they're going, regardless of what disaster or development situation they're going to. So.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it.
That's it?
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
it.
we had 5 questions.
That was fine.
Oh.